start. Uh, Now it's only 1 hour left until the final submissions. So we have gone through the 48 hours almost. So I think it's 42 going on right now.
Perfect.
So I was thinking about the structure where we could talk about, now you have presented yourself, so you kicked off this whole event at 4 p.m. on Friday, and now it's actually the last hour, so you were at the first hour and now the last hour. So it would be maybe interesting to, we will have a questions part in the end, but now in the beginning just to maybe learn at what could all the ideas and companies do after this. So now that they have done this hackathon, they have validated their ideas, so get some insights, what happens after you have the idea? And that could be something that would be interesting to get your insights on, and okay. The subject of this talk now. Fine. So if we look back at your presentation and your keynote on Friday, you talked a lot about you moving from the VC and private equity industry to the startup industry, and then you started working on these first ideas you had. So what were the first concrete steps or your key learnings when starting up and starting to work on your own ideas? What were the biggest challenges, and what did you actually do to get forward with those ideas?
Okay. Well, the thing you have to do to get forward with the ideas is, you have to make mistakes. But if you start off from some of the key learnings, we can start with, one thing that becomes very clear in entrepreneurship, and especially, when we talk about ideas, is that, people tend to think that ideas are valuable, but ideas aren't valuable. Everybody has ideas. So I think a good starting point to understand when you get to entrepreneurship is, that ideas are basically worthless. Everybody, as I said, everybody has ideas. It's the execution part that matters, and that's how you move forward with your idea. So, you can come up with the best ideas in your head, but if you don't know how to put them into the market, how to develop them and stuff, they're not worth anything. So I think it's really important to understand that, don't overemphasize, the importance of an idea. I think that's something that you should really try to get through in your head. And, that's something that people really, resist nowadays. They seem to think that ideas are extremely valuable, and when they meet with investors and stuff, they probably will face what I'm telling you now, that ideas, don't matter that much. And, the US is a good example of that. In the US, there are a lot of products that are, not that good, to be honest, because you have a big market in the States. So what happens is, in the beginning at least, is that, inferior products that have good execution, they have a good team that can actually make the product, get buyers, they probably are going to win. So there are some great examples of that in the market. When in the 80s there was this battle between Betamax and VHS, the two video formats. The one had two, the VHS had the one that won. They had the two wheels, and the Betamax had one. Apparently the Betamax technology was far superior to the VHS, but the VHS won because they could get market shares quicker, and they were more aggressive in their approach. So that was an example of when basically an inferior product won, and this is what happens constantly. The best products aren't necessarily the biggest products are not necessarily the best products. I know this is going to divide some audience here, but if you look at, for example, Mac versus PC, I know, don't fucking get angry now, but the Mac is extremely good, especially the MacBooks compared to PCs. But the market share, what's like 10%? Okay, I know there's pricing stuff involved here too, but there are countless examples of inferior products that are bigger than better ideas. So this is really important to understand, and this is how startups generally operate. When you have your first initial idea or you have the first demo, what you should do is you should just ask everyone for feedback. You should just go on and sell, and then you should, on your way, you should correct all the small stuff. Not sit around and wait until you have the best product, because in that phase, your competitors with shittier products are going to have already users. They're going to have paying customers, and after that, you're out. It doesn't matter if you have a better product, So yeah, that's one of the things that you should really try to understand. And another thing that was kind of a shock for me was I came from the financing world and investment stuff, and I basically worked B2B all my life. So business to business, I sold to companies, and one thing that was extremely surprising, how hard B2C is, how hard it is to sell to consumers, and it's getting harder all the time because of the competition and the lack of patience and the attention span of consumers nowadays. It's even if you look at the investors and what they invest in, you will notice a pattern. You will probably find more investors investing in B2B than B2C, because B2C is really hard. I usually tell an example to the startups I mentor. If they work with an app, for example, they tend to overestimate their own product, which is very common. You start to love your own product and you think it's everybody should know this and this is the best. What happens is I ask them like these following questions, 3 questions basically. When did you download an app the last time? Okay. And then they reply like, well, I don't know, last week. And then I ask them, when did you download an app that you use at least once a week? And then they would be like, well, they have to start thinking. And then the third question is like, when did you download an app the last time that you are using on a daily basis? And to be honest, very rarely do someone come up with an app very fast. We tend to circle around, 5 to 10 apps. You talk about apps. And it's very seldom that we include new products into our phones that we use daily. And then I say, this is your app. This is how people will react to your app. So why would someone download your app and use it daily? Like, it's extremely uncommon. Think of how few apps you have done this with. And now you expect me to believe that your app is going to be one of these that we're going to use daily. So, try to kind of figure out how you respond to products like yours, because you'll get closer to the truth and it have a more of a neutral approach to the apps. It's actually very uncommon that we even take new products, start using new products. So be careful of what you estimate of your own product.
Okay. There came actually in one question, so are you able to read it? Or do you?
Yeah. Okay. So the question is, I don't know if everybody can see, but what are some of innovative approaches you have seen on how they capture attention of consumers in the early phase? Also, should B2C companies focus on doing crazy stunt to get the traction they need? Very good questions. Yes and yes. So let's start with the capturing of attention. I mean, what you're basically asking is one of the questions that every startup is asking. How to get consumer attention. It's the only thing you actually need to care about if you're gonna succeed. It's the selling to the consumers. And there used to be a page called growthhackers.com, where people shared advice on how to do this sort of growth hacking to get consumer traction in the beginning. So growthhackers.com, and if you Google growth hacking, you will find extremely like a lot of information about this specific phase of how to grow. But what we did in the beginning with our company was that we used small beta testing groups to at least get some sort of idea of how people would respond. So we had a group of, for example, 200 people use the product, and we tracked the analytics through different systems of like how they use it, how often they use it, where do they encounter problems, etc. And then you start, dealing with those issues first before you publish it. You can do that. Then you know what people are gonna like. Then you can build your kind of growth strategy around some addictive elements of your app. But it's that's a little bit to decide. But if you look at like big events, as you mentioned here, big events tend to have a very short lifespan too, and people underestimate the time it takes to build a brand. So if you look at you do a stunt, the curve is going to look like this. You're going to get a lot of attention first, and then it's going to drop off very, very quickly. But you're going to end up in a user base that is slightly higher, but only slightly higher. And then you have to do it repeatedly for many times. I use example of when I started to use Spotify, for example. I heard of Spotify somewhere. Then I saw an ad. Then somebody told me about it. Then I saw an ad. And then I saw this. And then I saw that. I think it took, 2 or 3 years of repeated messages before I got it. If I look at my first Instagram account, I posted a photo like 2012. Then it took 2 years until my next. So that kind of puts in perspective the amount of time products need from the consumer side to get the attention, which is why it's very important in the beginning to understand that you're not going to be able to capture everyone. You need to divide your kind of consumers or customers into small segments. So you have, the early adopters, the people who like technology, who always want to have the latest product, etc. You're going to target that little group, and you need to get into that group and do everything you can to get into that group to use your product. Like every single product in the history of fucking mankind has had a very clear targeted focus group that is fairly small, but that they owned. We can go start with, Facebook. It started with universities, colleges. It was done for them. They started there, built it there, and then they gradually expanded out of there. How do you find that? Oh wait, let's see here. Let's take the second question here. Crazy expensive. Yeah, it's very crazy. So BTC comes almost. It's expensive. Yes. You have to remember that the products you see now that did make it. I sometimes tell that it's you have a better chance of playing in the starting 11 of Real Madrid than to build a global company, Because if you look at the big ones in the world, you have, Snapchat, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, what do you have? Messenger. we're talking about 5-6 products that are incredibly big in terms of social and consumer. And if you look at Snapchat, that's probably the exception because they had millions of users in the first year, but that's extremely uncommon. It's a black swan. It's like a positive black swan. It's so don't even try to get those guys as reference points. And coming back to the first question about crazy stunts, the funny part is that people tend to forget what Snapchat did in the beginning. First of all, they had a new thing. They had these disappearances. And one thing that people have already forgotten is the fact that they leaked nude pictures of users, which was very, very unethical. But they gained kind of notoriety because they did that. And people were like, what is this? What is this? What is this? And now nobody even remembers it anymore. Then came the filters, and they did a lot of new stuff. But people also forget that Snapchat closed almost $100 million financing round after their first year. So, they had a lot of money to play with. I read a story about Tinder. People think that Tinder is just going viral, but that's not true. There was a story in growthhackers.com about Tinder strategy. And Tinder actually uses... they use, celebrities that leak pictures of their usage to kind of scandal media, where they get kind of brand recognition and stuff. And they shared that story with users. So even apps like Tinder have to do PR and marketing to get, traction. So just becoming crazy viral and succeeding that way is just forget it. It's not going to happen. So let's go to the next question. Is how do you find the group? Well, depends on what product you have. If you have, let's say, if you have an app that makes traveling easier, I would start digging into travel blogs. Go into TripAdvisor forums and try to locate these guys over there and try to kind of dig through where you can find them. Probably if it were travel, I would assume we would talk about using maybe travel influencers for that, but it depends on the sector, and if you know what you do. Okay, here we have, it's motorists. Okay. Well, I guess then, I would investigate, forums where they discuss where these people are. Because if you look at the motorist group as a whole, if you start with the whole, you have probably kind of a Gaussian representation of those people. It's going to be like this. You're not going to get everyone. But within that Gaussian curve, there's a subset of people that are the early adopters, the tech-savvy guys. They're going to be somewhere along, the tails. And you're going to find out who they are by addressing, the whole, the whole set. The subset is going to be available from that set. And once you get the subset, let's say the motorist forum you're in are, 10,000 people. It's enough if you get, 300. It's going to give you quite a nice database for those 300. But don't get greedy. In the beginning, it's not about approaching everyone. It's about finding out, okay, who are people who are going to use this app, and then a small subset of those are going to help you understand how you can improve, what you can do better, what do they actually like. And once you know all that, then you can start scaling outside. But if you just, scale to everyone, you want the hardcore guys. You want the hardcore guys to start with. It's better to be the big boss of a small segment than just the small tiny boss of a huge segment. So it's better to have users who really, really love your product, even if it's small, because then you will dominate that segment. You will be able to monetize them better. There's so much more opportunities of actually owning a small segment. I don't know if that makes sense, but don't get greedy.
Yeah. And Tommy, I think that one of the big questions after this hackathon will be exactly the customer segmentation. So how can you actually build that ideal customer to yourself? And after that you have built this customer profile that you often build, how can you actually reach those? So I think like going for that a smaller pool but more relevant pool will be actually the answer, instead of trying to get big masses in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, the question is very wide, and you know, as I said, that's the question that everyone wants to find out. You know, who are the guys? And if I would know the answer, I would probably do it myself. But you know, it's increasingly hard nowadays to get in touch, you know, with your segment. You know, advertising in Facebook and that's hard. And you know, how many times do you see an app ad that you actually download? It's like extremely uncommon. So I don't know the exact answer of how to do it, but you know, bloggers, key influencer within that segment, magazines that write about this stuff. You know, the more you can do for free, the better. And a lot of businesses now do, you know, a lot of content marketing. So you can push your product through, you know, podcast, or you know, there are many different ways to do it. But really important is understanding that one simple, you know, ad campaign over a week, or one simple, you know, podcast episode, or one simple buying of an ad, you know, is going to make a change. It's not. You need to look at it from a little bit of a longer perspective, and it's hard because, you know, you don't have money, you have limited amount of time. So, you know, send mails to people who are influencers in your you know, segment, motorists, leading motorists. Bombard mails in every direction, contact them, ask for collaborations, ask them if they want to, you know, to try out your app. You know, there are no rules. You just need the attention of these people. And surprisingly, to be honest, people are fairly open to these kind of things. You know, I'm going to tell you a story. When I went to New York to a conference for sports, and there were we had just launched kind of a new product for media, for sports, and you know, we went there and we saw the speakers. They were, you know, David Stern. He's like the grand old man of National Basketball Association, NBA. There was the owners of Washington Capitals hockey team. There were the owners of Boston Celtics, and they all had, you know, keynote speeches in the Times Center, New York Times Center. So what we did was that, you know, we had a demo in our phones that was working offline, because we learned from our Spanish adventure that you should always have the offline mode and not rely on internet. So after the keynote was over, we went to the side door and were waiting for these guys. And once they stepped out of their keynote, we just said, David, do you have a minute? We've come all the way from Finland and we want to pitch you this thing. Please, can you give us 1 minute? And we pitched to, you know, David Stern. We pitched to the Washington Capitals owners and stuff. And everyone gave their cards, and we got in contact with these guys. And after that, you know, we even discussed investments with these guys. So, like, people are surprisingly open. If you make your case very, you know, to the point and quick, and add a little bit of a sympathetic layer, like you come all the way from Finland, it's just an airplane ride, but it sounds like you made a huge effort to meet them, and then the same trip, I was walking in Midtown New York, and I noticed that one of the speakers just passed me by. He was an NFL guy, a Super Bowl winner, Martellus Bennett. I was like, Jesus, was that Martellus Bennett? And I stopped and I was thinking, like, what the hell? I need to pitch to this guy. So I turned around and ran after him. And then I stopped in front of him and I was like, Martellus, didn't you just have a keynote back in the Times Center? It's like, yeah, sure. It's like, can I pitch to you? And in the middle of New York, in the middle of the street, I pitched pitched to him, and we got his card and we exchanged some mails after that. So, I mean, you can never lose, pride. What is pride? Do you think that these people who became successful are thinking about, I wonder what he thinks about me? They don't, trust me. And nobody does. So, just a side note, you need to take your chances. That's the point, maybe. But let's go to another.
There is no more new questions.
Incentives for the group. Okay, so you noticed that a lot of apps and products use things that seem very, very what do you say? Self-evident, even Volt and these kind of apps, they use referral codes, get discounts, win prizes. All that stuff works. It works. You'll be surprised of how many people use these kind of things. You wouldn't you wouldn't guess, but it's very common. When Uber came. They started giving out like $10 free rides when you shared with your friends and all that, and that create this kind of virality. What if your app is a free service? So it's a free service. So who's paying? I need to know who's the ads. Okay, cheers. It's a tough business model, man. Ad sponsored, apps. That's, you need a lot of users. But yeah, so it's a free service. Jesus, you put me on the spot, Daniel. Because we had one app based free service a couple of years ago, and the fact that we didn't make any money of it was because it was ad based. Because especially in Finland, you need such a huge base of people using it, like a lot. So it's a hard model. But free service. Then I guess your product just needs to be really, really good. It needs to have some kind of stickiness. They call it like stickiness. Let me tell you about. We had a calendar app for amateur sports, so parents to kids could see when they had training sessions and games, and that was the free service. And what we encountered was the following problem. We didn't know this problem before we started to get users, but we noticed that since the calendar basically told them when their kids are going to play the next game, they didn't need to open the app. On Wednesday, they remembered dates. So we had a problem with the frequency of use. We didn't to make money from. So even if we had 50,000 users or whatever, we only got like 100.
Voi vittu, sluta fucking ringa mig!
How do we keep them in the app, for a longer time? Can we add windows to new screens within the app so that we can show them another impression? And this is exactly what you see with this clickbaiting stuff. This is a result of this problem. Articles usually don't tell you, like, they tell you, like, oh, one celebrity did this and this during the corona, but they're not going to tell you who it was, because they want you to open it so that you can see the impressions from the ads so that they can make money. And this is why clickbaiting is a problem, because it's ad-based services that need to generate impressions for their ads. So if you want, have a free service, then you need to make it it's called stickiness. And you should use, different sorts of analytics programs, such as, their Localytics. There's, a lot of different products. And you do this kind of funnel analysis of your users. So they arrive here. Okay, what do they do next? What do you want them to do next? Oh, you want them to go here. Okay, let's go here. How long do you want them to stay here, and what should they do here? And what's the next path? Where do they go after that? Okay, you want to lead them here. So you need to basically analyze every step along the process of how you want your users to behave. So it's a big task to keep your users in app. I don't know if I answered your question, but it makes it sound like it's super hard, and yes, it is super hard. But it's only super hard because people think they need everyone at the same time. But if you have patience and try to understand the subsets of the small groups and work with them once at a time, you're going to be able to build something extremely good over time.
Perfect. So we have 10 minutes left of this keynote. There is 25 minutes time for our participants to leave in their final submissions. So we're during the last half hour. So what would be your last tips to those who are actually filming their pitches right now, trying to turn those in? Something that they should look on or think about when doing this 1 minute pitch now.
Okay, so I think I mentioned it on Friday, but present yourself, immediately get to the problem, or have a tagline. Let's take this motorist app here. Let's take that. I'm just gonna come up with something on top of my head here. Okay, so my name is Daniel Jacques de Jong, and we make motorists safer on the highways. And then we're gonna be like, oh, what do you mean? We install software that makes cars stop at 110 kilometers an hour, and they can't go faster. This way, we will save 1,000 lives a year on Finnish roads. But imagine what we can do globally. I'm Daniel Jacques de Jong, and this is Motorist App.
Nice.
Just get to the point very fast. And I'm sorry, Daniel, for using you as an example, but so very, very to the point. Sometimes one of the greatest arts is to be able to take something that seems very, very difficult and compress it into just one sentence. And let's take an example from the real world. If you look at all the big, for example, apps that you use in social media, they all have one thing they started with. They have only one thing. They have a lot now, but they started with one. And keep this in mind. Let's go. Twitter. They have tweets. Everybody know what tweets is. When Facebook came, they had likes. They came with the like button. Then Instagram came. Photos. Now they have videos and stuff, but they started with photos. Snapchat. Snaps. Everybody has this one thing. Google, search engine. And now there are a lot of different ad platforms and Google Analytics and all that stuff. But they all just had one thing. Even if they already thought out, we're going to do this and this and this. So if you have a very complex product, choose one which you go for. So then the recipient will understand. Instead of saying, like, if you go and try to explain what Facebook is now, it's going to be like, well, it's a platform where people can discuss, upload videos, share news, and also use targeted advertising to sell their products. And, it's like, oh, what the hell are you doing? It's like, so everybody, when they started, had one simple thing they did. And they might have planned it already. As Zuckerberg did, he already had a plan how to advertise and stuff. But that came later. He sold it to consumers by making it a place where you could like and interact. But in the background, he was building this ad-based system that probably nobody even understood when we started using Facebook. So try to figure out, yeah. Sorry.
Of course. You mentioned you are doing this startup mentoring also. If someone would like to have you as a mentor, how can they reach you, and what are the services that you actually provide?
Well, it's on a case-by-case basis depending on what stage you are. But I like teaching startups these kind of things that I talk about now. I like helping them improve their pitch, and I do a lot of pitching training. I just did for some slush companies, and also for the University of Eastern Finland, for their scientists, researchers. I had a pitching because they had very difficult ideas that they needed to compress to get investments to keep researching. But everything from financing to understanding the fundamentals. So if there are Finnish people in this group, you can find a lot of information. I'm going to add a comment here. You can find a lot of free information on pitching and financing and venture capital and everything for free on my page. And if you want to contact me, you can contact me either through LinkedIn or straight from my page. And then we can have a discussion and we can see how we can help. Oh, here we go into... all right. Is this really Vincent Forsman who's asking, or is this someone else?
It should be Vincent. I guess it's Vincent. It is.
Okay, got it. Oh, I love that question. Yeah, it's a good question. Dude, that's a very broad question. So it's going to be a change, yeah, and it's already changing. So as you mentioned, the reason why we are here at this phase is because we have a market economy with capitalist framework, and money is a very good motivator for people to build products. So I don't think that's going to change that much. But what is going to change, I think, is the how people will perceive entrepreneurs. We can already see that happening with Patagonia, who are focusing a lot on sustainability and stuff, and they get a lot of free PR and very good brand value from just these soft values. It's going to change, but for the mechanics to change of society, that we would stop shopping and stuff, that's a tougher one, because trade and buying stuff has been, it's been around always. So it's hard to see that that's going to change. Probably the consumer decisions on what products to buy is going to change. I hope fast fashion is going to be, disappearing. It's horrible. Who needs new clothes for every week? Are you serious? And I hope it's going to change. But it's not going to change for the company's point of view. It's the consumers that need to change their behavior. Yeah.
Perfect. And I think you can continue also. Perfect. But there is
so when you're pitching, basically...
just say. Sorry.
No more time.
There is 4 minutes.
No, so good luck, everyone. Yeah, good luck, everyone, with the pitching, and I hope everybody wins. I think everybody wins already. Sure. But keep it clear and concise. And I'm very glad to have been here. Hello, Kirsi.
Thank you, Tommy, so much. It was a pleasure to have you here and amazing to hear your insights regarding these different things. And as Tommy mentioned, you can find more information regarding Tommy from his website, license to fail, to be correct. So Tommy is posting there a lot of stuff with regarding entrepreneurship and different topics that he's covering. So please check that out and ask Tommy if you have any questions. You can also contact him directly on the website.
Yes.
Thank you, Tommy, so much.
Thank you.
And stay healthy.
Everyone, too. Namaste. Namaste healthy. All right.